Okay, hi, this is Dee Black, and this is a place where we talk about reality, consciousness, existence. Who are we? What are we? How do we navigate this wild, weird, wonderful world that we find ourselves in? What is it to be human on Earth? You know, that kind of stuff. And today we have inner space astronaut Brian Scott joining us. Hey, man, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Great. So for those of you who don't know him yet, Brian has an amazing YouTube channel, and he's also a life coach and founder of the Advanced Success Institute. And I want to read a few things. He's got about 25 descriptors on his bio, and some of them are the inner space astronaut. Oops, that's my timer to come. Epiphany addict, transformational engineer, awe junkie, wow archaeologist, quantum jumper, luck instructor, and future owner of the Denver Broncos.
That's right. That's right. Well, when they ask you to write a bio, you know, there's no way for me, if you're aware of me, how do I write a bio with all the stuff so.
Exactly. And that's just some of the 25 in the.
That's right. That's right.
And so, so Brian has just released an amazing 400-page book, which I have devoured, and it's called The Reality Revolution. And is it fully available now?
On March 31st.
March 31st? Okay, great. So I love that term, the reality revolution. And in the beginning and end of a lot of your videos, you say, welcome to the reality revolution. Will you say it now? Because I love the way you say it.
Welcome to the reality revolution.
Awesome. So what is
it's something that just came, I just started doing that. Yeah. I get that. I get comments and messages all the time about that.
It's great because it's like, oh, like, let's go. So what is the reality revolution? How would you sort of describe that?
I do believe that right now we are going through a massive global change. It's a spiritual change, but it's in the way that we see the world around us. The world is changing. We are starting to become aware that we have an integral link between our consciousness and reality. And I think that in this moment, as we move, it seems like things are propelling and moving faster. Maybe it's because of technology. Maybe it's something beyond what we can comprehend. But going back, let's say, 2000 or 1990, when we would have a thought, we might see something kind of like our thought manifested around us maybe a couple months later, 6 months later. We're starting to see our changes in reality much faster. They're doing studies on medications, and they are finding that the placebo effect is becoming so strong. When they do a study with a sugar pill, the placebo effect is making it so they can't validate the effectiveness of certain prescription drugs because of the effectiveness of the placebo. And you can actually see on a graph how it's getting more and more powerful. It feels like right now we're in a time when all of this stuff is happening, that everybody's thoughts are becoming manifest faster and more intensely. Even people that don't know about it. That's why the world seems so crazy. There's viruses and fears that are coming in. Our politics, our wars, whatever you can fathom. We create the most incredible nightmares because we don't know we're creating it. We let our minds run free, and we're becoming aware of it. And it's almost like it's done on purpose. We wouldn't be given as a baby the keys to a car to start driving it. We would just drive right into the tree. So we're slowly learning. I can almost guarantee anybody that's going through the coronavirus thing right now, they're watching all this stuff in the news. Everybody's had a little tickle in their throat, a little cough. Everybody's had a little bit of a runny nose, right? Everybody has had a little bit of phlegm and felt their bodies. I guarantee every single person on the planet has started to feel their body and become aware of it. And it's almost like a global awareness is becoming. I would not be surprised if almost everybody gets a little bit sick, you know what I mean, during this, that are aware of this, because it's such a massive pendulum of thought. And I think it's a good thing. I think you can take it as a lesson.
Yeah.
that we are, even if there's stuff going on outside of us, we are so powerful.
Right.
We are creating more than just what's in our bodies. And I see it. We are going through a reality revolution, more and more and more. And I treat my podcast very much like I'm just a reporter.
Yes.
On the edge of the reality revolution, just reporting what stuff that I come upon. It's so massive and incredible to fathom that, you know, I barely have scratched the surface of what is going on.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's so like you cover, you know, you even go like on your channel, like you go into like Neville Goddard and the imagination and all that. And like how much is of the world that we experience what we feed with our attention, you know, and our you know, our imagination and our focus.
Everything.
Yeah.
Every single thing we see in the world is created by our imagination. Everything. Even if it's accidental, it's all the virus, the war, the court case, the weird murder, the serial killer, all of the terrible things and all the great things. It's all created by our imagination. As Neville Goddard says, it could be just some shepherd boy or a woman that's working on her wine press that has created this world war that we see. We are so powerful. We have no idea. And when we realize it later on, it's going to be amazing. We're going to be like, you know, I can't believe we were walking around with this massive power and we really only scratched the surface of it. We didn't know the whole time.
Yeah.
And we're awakening to what this power is.
Yeah.
Thank God we didn't get it all at once, or the whole planet would go insane. There's more and let it grow all overnight. We would not know what to do. Right. So it's very much like we're going through a classroom, and that's what it feels. What's that?
Oh, I think I'm getting an unstable internet connection message here. I hope it's going to be okay. Keep going. Like with.
All right.
With
everything's good on my end.
Okay, good. So with like with parallel realities, because like, is it that, you know, there's realities where, you know, those things aren't happening. Is that right? It's kind of like we're aligning with it because we're putting our attention on it. Would you say that? Or like, is there a version, you know, of Earth?
All we ever really have, all we ever have in our right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
Oh no, that's okay.
I think that all we really ever have is this present moment. But as we move forward through this present moment, we have so many possible variables of things that we can do and different things that are available to us. And in the information field around us, there are parallel realities. Because it's almost like they were designed that way ahead of time, but they're all available because there's a certain physics. If I bounce a basketball, it's going to come up to my hand. There's a programming behind that. There's a pattern, there's a structure. So there's these structures in this information field, and they're all available to us.
Right.
And so what is often happening when our thoughts are creating reality, they're really not creating reality. They're just simply moving to a reality where that already happens. It's easier to discuss it as if we're creating reality, but we're actually not creating a reality. All of the realities exist. And what happens is there's an awareness. When you become aware that all the realities exist, it really allows you to move towards realities you may prior to that have thought, I could never do that, or that's impossible. The understanding of this structure of parallel universes, or if you don't believe that, just the space of variations that's available of possible universes. Either way, it doesn't matter. But the understanding of the many worlds theory as a way of thinking frees you up, because it does allow you to accept the improbable. And oftentimes we only are able to the reality that you have around you and the reality I have around me is just what I believe in. I've believed in everything around me. And so if we can change our beliefs, we can believe in something different. At least that's the way I comprehend it, and has worked for me. So
yeah, and like that's where limiting beliefs come in, and that's one of the topics that you address, you know, in the book. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? About, you know, how, you know, what we're believing will limit our experience of what we can possibly imagine.
Yeah. Well, the number, I get so many people that are so incredible that I talk to that are just amazing. They're artists, they're super smart, that you can see the boundless possibilities when you're talking with them. But they have a self view of themselves that they think I'm ugly, I'm dumb, I'm not good enough. They compare themselves, they see other there's so many different limiting beliefs that we create. We create an identity around these beliefs, and then what happens is all that boundless possibility just is squelched away into this hidden compartment. And so it is a number one. Even if you're aware that anything's possible, a lot of times the reason that you aren't able to manifest or move towards those realities is limiting beliefs. A belief that you can only make so much money, that they were never meant to make a certain amount of money, a
Right.
belief that you can never lose a certain amount of weight or be a certain level of health, a belief that you could not travel to that place or own that thing or whatever it is. When I say the future owner of the Denver Broncos, I mean it. Because I'm a big Denver Bronco fan and I'm going to own the Denver Broncos. But you could
You
easily
already
say
do.
that's impossible.
Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
It, that's impossible, and
Mm-hmm.
that is. I'm sorry, I got a delay there, but
Okay.
so yeah, it's it really is an allowing of and changing of what is possible, and those beliefs can really limit what we can do. I do talk about that in the book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you experienced a belief that you have ever overcome, something that you believed in that
Um,
changed?
well, yeah, like, I mean, even the whole thing about doing this YouTube channel, because it's like,
Right,
in one sense, it was, I just allowed it to happen because it was like, it wanted to
right,
happen. And I said, I'm not going to resist it. I'll just let it happen. Right. And it's kind of like, I almost feel like I jumped into it where, I already existed with 5 videos, like,
right.
kind of. But the other thing too is that you addressed in the book that relates to my experience is this thing about fear as fuel, because I was terrified, and like when I did my
Yeah,
first interview with Roxanne Swainhart, when we came on before I hit record, I just said to her, like, I'm shitting my pants right now, and it's kind of like, you have to still do it, right? Like, because
right.
fear is one of the things as well that stops people from going into that bigger
I get
reality.
exactly where you're coming from. I felt the same way when
Yeah.
I interviewed Frederick Dotson or Cynthia Sue Larson, just like you just did. I was so nervous before, but it was a wonderful experience for me to have, even if
Yeah.
the interview didn't work out perfectly. Uh, and there
Yeah.
is something about YouTube that gives us this daily opportunity for us to take an action, a symbolic action.
Yeah.
But as you learn from that, it a lot of times we want to achieve our dreams, and it's just a simple action
Yeah.
that we need to take towards it. If we want to move it out for our dream, kind of try
Yeah.
in the book a little bit. And it doesn't have to be a lot of hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but you're like you said, you allowed it to happen. It wasn't hard, right?
Right. It
You didn't
wasn't.
imagine it being. It's not that difficult, but
Yeah. And
yeah, and it's very inspiring. I'm so happy that you did the channel and keep it
oh,
up. Yeah.
because the thing
Mhm.
was is that I had there was a lot of struggles in it, but it was like effortless struggle. That's hard to describe it because it's like,
It is.
there's so much, like, you have to learn all this stuff, like behind the scenes, like with the uploading and a little bit of the editing and, this and that. And
Right.
mistakes I was making, all kinds of stuff. But, I watched a lot of these guys, thank you for all you guys who are out there who are giving these free videos for us. Cause these
Mhm.
guys are saying stuff like, just do it. Your first few videos are
Right.
going to suck, so suck it up and get out there,
Exactly.
and you don't need equipment, use your iPhone, and they're just going like, you have a message, get out there and do it. And I
That's what
first
I
started,
say. Just
yeah,
start doing it, and you'll be happy later on that those first episodes people didn't watch them,
yeah,
because you might blow it, and it doesn't matter. So just do it,
yeah,
and
yeah,
every single one you'll get better at it.
yeah. And
That's been in my experience.
go ahead.
No, that's been my experience. Every single one, you just get a little bit better at it. You understand it a little bit better. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's really cool. And I was going to say, just I'm a little bit nervous talking to you.
Nobody's ever been nervous talking to me, so this is a first,
Never?
and I appreciate it. Never.
Never.
No, but I'm just,
Okay, yeah.
it's exciting for me to talk to somebody that's read the book.
Yes,
So.
I love the book. Now you talk about, in the book, you talk about the aura technique, which is something that you've created. Do you want to like talk a little bit about that, about what that is?
Yeah. I was aiming to release it right at the same time as the book. Maybe with what's going on, I'll wait.
Okay.
But it's just a process that I've kind of come up with in changing or quantum jumping into a parallel universe. And it really, it comes down to two steps. It's alternate universe reality activation. So finding the reality that you want. And then there's the next step that we always forget, and that's actualization. Yeah. It's going through that process of seeing what you want and then actualizing it. Right. And there's a bridge of incidents that occurs between the two. And it's really a meditation technique at the beginning, and then a set of steps to take mentally, taking symbolic action towards it. It's a process that you can do in a couple of days, but I've tried to figure out about 77 steps along the way that I've been working on. That's kind of daily exercises for what I did, including different meditations that I've already uploaded, with maybe some new meditations, kind of like a P90X for meditation. It's kind of because the quantum jump works, but a lot of times people are not willing to accept that immediate change in their reality. It's not like people accept into a parallel universe instantaneously do that, or protects us from major changes to avoid us from going insane.
Yeah.
If you ended up in a world where they like that movie where there are no Beatles songs,
right? Yeah.
It could drive you crazy. So there's a part of you that doesn't want you to go completely insane, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I have had things like that manifest, but I didn't freak out because I've known about the Mandela effect and I've heard about all these things. But like one really amazing thing that happened with me is a whole lake appeared and park by where I live, where I used to go walking all the time, and it wasn't there. And the funny thing about that is like, I didn't manifest it on purpose, because that's another thing maybe we can talk about is there's kind of, to me, it seems like two ways of manifesting. One is where it just happens, right? Where the quantum jumps. And the other is, you can set an intention and jump there, but as well, things happen. Because I would go for a walk, there's different places all around that I would walk, but there was sometimes I would just go to this big lot, like, at a shopping mall late at night when everybody would be gone. And I would just imagine that it was an ocean, right? And there was a little part there you could stand with a railing, and I pretend I was doing like Neville Goddard stuff, right? And, just right. Like, this is the ocean, I can hear it and all this stuff. And then one day when I went for a walk where I usually walk, all of a sudden there's this path appears, and I start walking along the path, and there's a big lake there. And and I read this plaque, and it had been there, and they built it for this woman who was a principal of a school, and she was very dedicated, and they made this park for her. And it was like, I know that park was not there before, because I walked there. But you can't tell people that, right? Because they'll think you're crazy.
Right.
But,
I mentioned that in the book, as you say. There was a building that appeared, but it clearly was not brand new. I noticed. And then Cynthia Sue Larson mentions that, and I think that we are experiencing these things all the time.
Yeah.
Because for a variety of reasons, but we are not noticing. Only certain people really notice. You do find them when you look for it more often. And it's almost like if you make a big deal about it, that you don't see as many of them. That's one thing that I've noticed. There is something about noticing it, and then that next step of really acknowledging it. It's kind of this, but we're not manifesting it, we're moving into a literal timeline. I get. That's one of the things I've learned from reality transurfing is that it's an entire timeline that has a completely different beginning to end. It could be a minor change, but in that timeline there is a lake.
Yes, exactly.
So you may not have manifested that lake, but you moved into a timeline where there is that lake.
Yes,
so it's not as magical as you think. You just your consciousness shifted into a different realm, reality. The you that doesn't have the lake is still going on,
Right.
E-
Yeah.
It's possible that you that doesn't have the lake is just information now,
Yes.
but you made that little change from the one universe to the other. And
Yeah.
that is what I'm trying to say, is that we're moving into a different reality,
Yeah.
a different reality.
Yeah.
Us becoming aware of this, that we are multidimensional,
Yes.
will be a reality revolution. That
Yes.
is what is happening, and it's going
Yeah.
to change everything. You
Yes.
imagine a universe where it might take thousands of years, where they finally say, yeah, we are moving through parallel realities,
Right.
and it's like accepted as a society. What happens then?
Yeah.
What about law? You say, hey, when I did that, I was in a different reality, right?
Yeah.
That
Right.
could be a legal argument that people make in the future. That wasn't me. I was in a different reality when that happened,
Like, are you talking about
right?
when you got shot? Are you
Like in the future, thousands of
oh,
years. I'm
oh,
contemplating if, when we accept as a society that we are all multidimensional, moving through
yes.
parallel
Oh, I
realities.
see. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
imagine if somebody comes along and accuses you of a crime, and you could say, well, that wasn't me, I was in a different reality, right?
But
What's
that
going to
whole thing is
happen?
because everything, there's no such thing as time. So like all of that, like anything that could ever possibly
Right,
happen is already happening in this eternal now. So it's like
right,
we are probably moving back and forth a lot more than we know it, because there's that thing in physics where we blink in and out of existence, at the smallest scale. Everybody,
right.
every physical thing blinks in and out. So it's like, who knows where we're going when we're blinking out, and blinking back in, but we don't have that awareness right now of it. But we're starting to get more aware, because as we like one of the things too is to be open-minded. Like you have to be
Mhm.
open-minded to be able to be available for noticing these things, instead of just like just shrugging it off as, oh, I just remember that wrong, or but like so Brian had, for those who don't know, and please read his book, you'll love it, and watch his channel and everything. But he had an experience where he was shot, right? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or
Yeah, I was going through the awakening process that many people go through, nothing different than anybody else, where I was meditating, experiencing incredible things, and it happened during this time. I had a home invasion. I take responsible for my reality. Somehow I created it, I guess. But some kids, as I was running away from a kid, this kid pointed a gun at me, and I turned and tried to, and he shot at me, and the bullet bounced off my back. And the probabilities of it, just the angle that he shot at me, there's a glass porch door, and he was shooting me with the 22, and the angle I was moving it at, I have a little mark on my back where it bounced off. So I knew that something incredible had happened, the very improbable reality. And while it was happening, it felt very slow, as if I could see all the different realities that were happening.
right.
So, and it was one of those so profound things. I really felt like I didn't feel like the way I'd lived my life, I didn't deserve the second chance I had been given, compared to so many other people that I had known, that I loved, that I had lost, and it was very profound for me. I was contemplating how did this happen? I felt like, well, I need to deserve my second chance. I need to justify it. That's one of the reasons I wrote the book. I also, after it happened, I do believe that I had gone through a massive jump into some other altered variation in reality. It felt like it did, but the logical part of me, the scientific part of me, raised by a veterinarian that taught me science, I assumed I was just insane, that I was going through some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder. I saw objects that weren't there before. I saw buildings that weren't there. I saw changes in people in my life, a whole variety of things that I just felt like I was in a different world. And so I tried to see if I could move into other realities, and experimented with as many different kinds of ways to change my consciousness as I could, as I discussed in the book, as ways to explore different levels of consciousness and dimensions and different realities. So.
Yeah. It, like, the book really is kind of like a handbook for transformation, or like a guidebook, because there's so many different techniques and things that are suggested. And energy is a big one, right? To have a very maintain a very high energy with things like martial arts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Um,
I found if you look at physics, the uh, uh, looking at an electron or subatomic particle, when it does the quantum jump, like you said, it blinks out and then blinks back.
right.
It's usually because of an excess of energy that causes it to jump. And
Okay.
so as I discuss in the book, if you can ramp up the energy in your body, not by drinking some coffee, but there are ways through Qigong, the 5 Tibetans, I outline a set of techniques that I developed. Physical actions, it takes about 5 minutes. I don't know if you got a chance to experiment with them, but
Yeah.
if you do it before your meditation,
Yeah.
then you have this energy that when you do it, you suddenly are much more effective in jumping into these realities,
Right.
because there is an energy component. So that is part of my thinking. As you look at you can compare what's happening on the subatomic level to what's happening in us. So by
Yes.
using those principles, by using these energy techniques, I have found greater success. And also people that I've coached through this have also reported greater success in seeing major changes just by their own thoughts.
Right. You like, you have so much knowledge, and like, approximately how many books have you read, including audiobooks? Approximately, what do you think? Like, you just have consumed so much information. I even wonder how you even distilled it down into one book, how you decided what
You
you're going
know,
to put
it's
in.
I really appreciate you asking me. It's before I started this channel, for some reason my life's purpose was to acquire information
Right.
on a massive level. I was a policy debater in college, and you have to read massive amounts, learn how to speed read. I huge, just massive. I was taught by my dad, pretty much just to be a huge book lover, and I've
Yeah.
loved to read books my whole life. Starting out mostly fiction and science fiction,
Right.
but then just exploring everything and using how I had learned in policy debate in college how to research a topic. You don't just research it, you research it and all the authors behind it, and then you go and look at the science behind it. And I love to take a subject and research it all the way through to the very end, and anything that comes out of it I want to follow that. So I learn, and I've been able, it's like a tree, a branch of knowledge. I'm constantly evolving, and then eventually using Audible, something I also learned from debate in college, is how to talk fast and also listen to things very quickly. So I got into a habit because of my job. I was doing stuff at my desk for a while, and I had no choice. It was the kind of work, if you've ever had it, where it's mindless work, where it's click, click, clicking, and so you can listen to something and then focus on it while you do the work. So I
Wow.
was doing this mindless work for many years, and I was listening to stuff at 3.5 times speed. And so
That's fast.
I would listen to a 24-hour book in 8 hours, right? So one day I might listen to a massive book, and I would listen to that book. And so I would listen during a week, I would, just listening, I would burn through 9 or 10 books. I owned a bookstore, so I started getting access to books that would come to me from people that returned books, right? Somebody buys a book for me, and then I'd see it, and then I'd want to read it. And then that would become so I would never be able to count the number of books.
Yeah.
My house is, every room in my house is filled with books. 3 or 4 bookshelves in every room if I can put them. It's
Yep.
devastatingly hard for me to move. If I have to move, I've moved several times. The hardest thing in the world is to move is books, because they're so
Yeah.
heavy and
Yeah.
box of books.
You
So
need little wine boxes or something good from the
yeah.
liquor store.
So, but and I can see why I went through this phase, because there's a purpose for me, and that's just dissemination of this information and putting it together.
Yeah.
That's been the way. For some reason, that's my purpose, is to
Yeah.
take this information and put it together. So bring lots of disparate information and put it together for people to understand. I can't even explain it. There was something else making me do that. if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're letting it happen, right? It's
I was
happening
letting it
through
happen,
you,
but
right? Yeah,
if I felt an overwhelming need and desire. It's what I wanted to do with that. And so um, we all have things we end up doing, and it might be part of what your purpose is. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of books in general. It doesn't
yeah,
have to be on this topic. It can be
right,
Star Wars. So
right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Because even like there are things on your channel that weren't in the book. I think Neville Goddard
yeah.
imagination wasn't really as much in the book, right? But you do a lot of YouTube's on.
This book was written a year ago before I was really getting into Neville
Oh,
Goddard.
okay. Yeah.
So I did not include. I definitely want to write about Neville Goddard in the future, but
That
this
would be
book
great.
was my parallel reality phase, and so I do mention him a couple times,
Mhm. Yeah.
but definitely Neville Goddard is in the same vein. He's teaching it on such a simple level. It's so pure and perfect. As somebody that's taught this and is also a student, the
Yeah.
way that he teaches it is just so perfect. And he's using the Bible,
Yeah.
which at first seems off-putting.
Yeah.
It seems kind of like, I don't want to hear that. Then
Yeah.
you have all those memories of a kid of listening to the preacher on the radio, the
Hmm.
crazy preacher. But then you start to listen to it, and he's appealing to that inner core spiritual part of you and
Yeah.
giving the same message that I'm giving in the book.
Yes.
That is that if you go in within and create the feeling of this future self that you want to be, as if you're in the moment of it
Yeah.
happening right now,
Hmm.
then that a bridge of incidents will occur to lead you to experiencing that same event.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you read his book Out of the World, he's really implying that the parallel reality theory when he talks about physics in that book.
Yeah, I haven't read any of his books. I've only, listened to a lot of your readings of it, but I totally love it. And it kind of reminds me of like sometimes people had to use biblical terms in order to like not get
Yes.
persecuted almost, right? Because there was a Saint Teresa, she wrote about the seven castles or whatever, and she was a Spanish nun, and that's when during the Spanish Inquisition, they almost burned her at the stake as being a witch. So in her writings, she always spoke about Jesus and things like that. But really, when you read it, she's just doing that not to get killed
Right.
because what she's saying is, And so I think
Right.
Neville does that when he says, God is your imagination or Jesus is your imagination or whatever he's saying. It's like he's using language that's going to keep him from
Yeah.
getting too.
It's a wonderful concept and idea to really discuss. And the more that I've learned from Neville, that the imagination is God, and that God crucified himself to become man, using these terms like that God is in man.
Yeah.
He implies that in the back of your head is God just sitting coiled, waiting to awaken inside of you, and that God is in everyone,
Yeah.
and that we all go through a set of experiences that are all states, and that's all they are. We are not those experiences. We're moving through them like places or locations, like tourists,
Yeah.
and we're going through them. It doesn't matter if we're Hitler or Stalin or Oprah. It's all just states, and there's infinite states that we're going through. And so you can change other people's states. If you're really God, he goes to the next level and is saying, if you're really God, you have control over everything. That means conversations that you're having in outside circumstances, including the whole outside world. Now, he implies that you can, you may have control to help improve other people's lives by imagining great things for people. Then they can have great things happen. And also implies that it only works when you imagine lovingly, because when you
Right.
imagine for someone else,
Yeah.
you are imagining for yourself,
Yeah.
because everyone is the same being.
Yeah.
So when you imagine terrible things for someone else, terrible things happen for you. It's a
Yeah.
really profound teaching
Yeah.
that still resonates with me every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is what Jesus did. And I think that's why Jesus could heal. Like, I don't know how much, like, because when he looked at someone, he saw them whole, you know, he didn't see them sick, you know, and
Right.
so it's like the eyes of the beholder kind of thing. It's like, you know, like stand up and walk, you know, like, and,
Yeah,
you know, and like we can always do that with our loved ones, you know, even when they're sick or they're
it's
going through
true.
anything, or, you know,
I've
someone,
really seen this in action.
sorry?
Yeah, I've seen it in action. It's
Yeah,
imagining somebody as whole, as beautiful, as wonderful.
yeah.
You know, I just did a and then they see, they actually change to that. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time,
Hmm.
but the people in my life, you may have been they're struggling,
Hmm.
and if you just accept that they're struggling, um, then it's almost like you're agreeing to that.
Yeah.
So if you see them not going through that struggle, and then they suddenly get a job or something great happens for them, then you start to see that you had that effect. It's amazing. It really
Yeah,
is amazing to
it
consider,
is,
and
you
it's
know.
exciting. So then you can really change. In my own experience, I have much more effect for other people than myself.
Yeah.
I don't,
Why
you
is
know what I
that?
mean? I don't know. I think it's for a lot of people. If I imagine
Yeah.
something for someone else, it happens much faster, much more powerfully. Myself, I has my I'm still going through my own limited beliefs that I have to.
Right.
That I believe, you know, it's easier.
Yeah.
To, but I also believe, and as Neville teaches, the more you believe for others, it's almost like this living water that goes through you, this
Hmm.
power that you're imagining for
Yeah.
others. You get more power for yourself.
Yeah.
And so as I
Mm.
imagine lovingly for others, I see the things I imagine for myself also happen faster.
Yeah. You know, and like, because there's that whole thing about, and you even address that in your book about how like the, like our body and our cells, they don't know whether we're, you know, really experiencing something or whether we're just imagining it or whatever.
Yeah,
And so that's why people who have trauma, if they keep talking about it over and over again, their body keeps reliving it as if it's happening, right? So
re-experiencing it.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know, and so it's the same if we're thinking about others in that way, our body's, you know, responding to it for ourselves as well, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. So let me see. I
No,
just,
it's one of those things that you see. Uh, if you have a traumatic experience like that when I got shot, I could easily pull that memory up and experience that over and over and over again.
yeah,
Anybody that goes through a traumatic incident. So it's important because your body is not healthy when it goes through those incidents if it re-experiences them. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. There, Deepak Chopra. Like, I mean, I heard him say decades ago, but it really stuck with me. And now everybody's saying it because, you know, he at first was ridiculed a lot, right? Because he was one of the first ones that came out with the mind body stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's a bunch of woo woo and
Right.
everything." But now it's acceptable. But you know, so decades ago, I heard him say, "Your immune system is eavesdropping, you know, on your thoughts and feelings." You know, that was a really good way of putting it. You know. Because
I
it's
love
getting
that.
a
That's true.
cue.
Yeah.
Like our immune system gets our cue from us, like, oh, she's freaking out. We better,
Yeah.
you know, we better brace ourselves for attack or whatever, you know. And meanwhile, someone's just thinking, oh, they hate me or something. It is, you know,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, there's so many things in your book about like so many different techniques, and so are those all pretty much things that you pretty much have tried or?
Absolutely. I've tried everything. You know, I talk about the flotation tanks and
Yeah,
vibration tables and different headsets that you can wear to create the hypnagogic effect.
right.
And I do detail some different instruments that I've used and sleep meditations. I'm a like I said in my bio, an awe junkie.
Yeah,
I'm always experimenting and changing my consciousness, and that
yeah.
stuff is fun. When you reach a
Mhm.
point where you experiment with your consciousness and it's fun,
Yes.
it's like playing a video game, then you'll start doing that stuff too. Everybody goes through their phase, and that's what I'm kind of documenting in this book.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there's a lot in there. So it's like a big smorgasbord. So it's like there's going to
yeah,
be something in there for everyone because there's just so many different techniques, and it really is about our state of consciousness, and we have total control over it. Because you know there was this old paradigm where people used to say, "Oh well, I can't help how I feel," you know, and it's like now we're finding out. Well, wait a minute, you're the boss of you, and like you in your book have like the anchoring technique, right? Do you want to maybe talk a little
hmm
bit about what that is? You can anchor a feeling in.
right. in neurolinguistic programming, they have a really great concept called anchoring. When applied, it becomes very powerful if applied repeatedly. If you're in a really exciting moment, like you're at a concert or something really wonderful, or if you can go back and remember a wonderful experience that was, you're excited, maybe you're with family or it's something wonderful, and then you can use something to anchor that feeling. Sometimes you can pinch yourself or snap your fingers or say a particular word, or if you do it and then you repeatedly do it, maybe you have the similar feeling and you repeatedly anchor this feeling, then you can use this anchor in another emotional state to pull up and create that same emotional feeling. And it's a way to control your states by using different anchors. Hypnotists do it all the time. They will create an anchor when they say a certain phrase or experience and create an emotional state. They will create an anchor and then use the anchor later on. In advertisements, they do it all the time. They have symbols and it's used in movies. One, if you use it consciously, you can use it to change your emotional state.
Yeah. Oh, we're having a little bit of a delay. Is it okay on your end? Every now and then.
It's good on my end, yeah.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad. Yeah, that's really good. And so we really have full control over our state if we're aware of the fact that we have that ability to do that, right? We don't have to be at the whim of circumstances, you know?
It's true.
Yeah.
That is one way to consciously control your state. I get people that say, I can't control my state. I feel this way and I can't control it.
Right.
And so that's one of the first things. What's your anchor? Can you anchor this state? Can you create can you go back and imagine other states? And so, yeah, it is a way. And I've tried to do that with my meditations, is create anchors over time. If you do my meditations over time, you might notice I say a word or something and that's anchored to another meditation, or a song is from another meditation. So, and I think it's definitely a way, if you learn about it and you consciously use it, it's the best way to control your states. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And meditation. And you talk about the void as well, right? The void. Going into
Yeah. One of the most effective things that I've learned, and I learned that really from Dr. Joe Dispenza. But once I learned it from Dr. Joe Dispenza, as often when anybody's into Dr. Joe Dispenza, he's pulling this from ancient mystical teachings. And when you go back and look at Buddhism and yoga, they've been talking about the void forever. And then you find it in quantum physics.
Yes.
And the idea is that space is kind of a void, but there is not really ever truly a void. It's infinite probability. Like a black hole may be, as they talk about in the Law of One, the ultimate manifestation of God in this third density is the black hole, is this pure infinite probability. So in the void, if you can clear your mind and go into the void, that means forget about everything, who you are, your name, your family, what city you're from, what state you're from, your religion, your gender, and just go into this void, all the stuff that you don't bring to it, and then try to imagine what possibilities that you want for your future. Then you end up having an access to all the different variabilities that are available in the quantum field.
Right.
And so by using the void, or the concept of the void, especially within meditation, it's a way to access source that at first doesn't make sense, because its source, in many ways, the void may be God. Mm-hmm. It's just that it's the space of variations, as discussed in reality transurfing, mm-hmm. or some people call it the all mind. In Indian mythology, they talk about Indra's net. It's that it's all kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so you start to see this commonality. And then when you try to access it in a meditation, it's very powerful, because within the void, you will find whatever possible reality that you want. It's often really effective if you have something that you want to solve, some difficult problem that you don't think there's a solution for. Go into the void. If you can mentally go into the void, you will find a solution that you may not have had before. And at least that's been in my experience as I've
Right.
taught it.
Yeah. And it's kind of that thing too of like, you know, when you drop, like when you're overthinking about a problem and you're trying to, then you just contract yourself. But then if you forget about it and you go have a shower or something, all of a sudden it comes to you. It's kind of that same thing about not, you know, about like it comes up. It's, you know, that saying about it coming out of the blue or coming out of the, you know, the air is
Right.
is literal, right?
It's literal, right? Yeah.
Like that saying, you know.
Right. It's out of thin air.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like
Absolutely.
they also call it like an empty fullness, you know, or a pregnant emptiness or whatever, because it's like it's one of those paradoxes where it's empty yet it's full.
Right. I remember when I first did my void meditation, even um, after Dr. Joe's had been out, people thought it was weird. I had friends that go, it just seems kind of weird. You're going into the void. It seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
But really, the best way is to experiment with this particular concept. And that's why I think it's so powerful, is that it works. It really
Yes.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, like with Dr. Joe says, like, you know, be nobody, nowhere, you know, you're nothing, you're nobody, you're nowhere, you're, you know,
Right.
all that kind of stuff. And so you drop everything. And it's like you have a holiday or a vacation, because like when you let go of everything that, that you're dealing with, and you just, it's just a break, you know?
Yeah. If you are always in your own little world with what you have in your bank account and all these things, you're just in a little tiny little part of all the realities that are available. And may be a timeline available to you over here that is only available if you let all that stuff go, just temporarily, so that it becomes something that is available. Uh, and
Right.
so it's the void is really about learning to let go of all the things that we have and opening up the possibilities, because anything you bring to it, you're gonna that limits. It's just like a flashlight, and it's like a full spray, and it's just limiting your flashlight. Anything that you bring to it, it's just going to limit what you can see, what's
Right.
available to you. There's only a little portion that's available to everything that is with a person named Brian Binkston. That's my actual name.
Right.
I changed my, because nobody could spell my name, right? So Brian Scott, there's more options available. So
You know,
right.
I was going to tell you, because I did the same thing, because my name was Ildi, and like what people would always go, what, Hildy, Helga, you know, and that's when I eventually, like at some
Right.
point, I shortened it to D, because it was the same thing. How do you spell that? And then what nationality is that? And
Right.
but yeah, I've
Right.
never heard a name like
But
yours.
I had to let go of my name. I had to there was a period where I was like, well, that's who I am. I have to let go of Brian Binkson, right? Nobody could spell it. It's got three
Spell it for
consonants
us.
in a row. So even my best friends can't spell it. And I have to explain how to spell my name every time. So, but I had to let go that Brian Binkson is not, but the void opens up Brian Scott. That's my middle name. And at least with me, then you always know that you'll get a little bit of BS, right? So.
So your middle name is Scott?
My middle name is Scott,
Oh,
right? Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's really funny. So what else? Let me just make sure I cover everything I wanted to here. Actually, another thing that I'm just remembering now that you had in there about the, it kind of applies to what's happening now with the CV and all that, is that you had said something, I'll paraphrase it, that, when something happens, people tend to have like an initial reaction of, have an outrage against it, but they don't realize that they're actually feeding it. Something like that?
Yeah. As we learn in reality transurfing, this idea of pendulums. And so pendulums are these energetic structures that form when groups of people are having basically the same thought. When we think about the virus, everybody's thinking about it, a literal structure starts to take shape. We don't know if it's conscious or not. They talked about it in old days as an egregore.
Right.
But the concept is, even if you're opposed to it and you're angry with it, you're still giving it energy and it grows. Mm-hmm. And so as long as you're angry with it, it will continue.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very interesting concept. And so if you feel outrage for something, you're giving it energy. Your
Yeah.
outrage will not change it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting thing to learn about. It changes the way you think about the world. It does.
Yeah. And like, it's like, you know, Esther Hicks was saying that repeatedly till she was blue in the face. And she was saying, like, I'm just telling you the same thing over and over again. You were thinking about what you don't want, and you're giving you're feeding what you don't want, but you think that you're thinking about what you want, you know, just as a more of a superficial example, if someone wants money, right? Not that's superficial, but I mean, more material,
Right.
I mean. And then people are thinking like, they're feeling, and they're feeling also like that they don't have it, right? And so it's like, it's very confusing when it, you know,
Exactly.
and also people tend to think that they're, it comes from a good place in the heart. It's like, if I'm outraged about this thing that's happening, and maybe the virus isn't that good of an example in this case, maybe something that a politician is doing, or, you know, or some kind of decision about oil or whatever, that speaking out in an outrage is coming from a good place in the heart, but it is, you know, the focus is going on the wrong thing. The focus should be on how you want it to be, right? Like, and that's where energy should go. Like, imagining the way you want it to be, not a fighting. Like, because fighting is resisting, and what you resist persists, right?
Right. The really amazing teaching that Neville Goddard gives along the lines of what you're saying, that I can't stop thinking about, that I put out a call to anybody who watches this video, is the idea of believing it in. And that is
Yes.
Robert Frost. Robert Frost mentions before he died in an interview, the famous poet, saying that the founders of this country, they didn't think about the future when they created this country, the United States. They believed it in. They chose a reality they wanted, and they believed it in. And so
I'm getting rushes.
it's a very difficult concept, but important to understand. And I believed when I read this, it was meant for now all the way. If you read that, if you listen to that lecture, he's talking about the politics that we have going on now in that lecture, like the possibilities for any monarchy and all these things.
Yeah.
And so if we can believe it in, forget about all the politics, because everybody wants us to be fighting with each other.
Yeah.
If we can believe it in, and we can come to a mutually accepting world that is peaceful and greater than what we have now, and loving and wonderful, not opposing what's happening now, forgetting about what's happening in our outside world, just like we do in our own manifestations. We imagine a world that's loving and beautiful and peaceful, where people have their rights and it's growing and everybody is prosperous and healthy, and we're moving towards greater education is important. We're moving to higher. We can start imagining and creating a list, and we can believe it in.
Yeah.
And that is what I believe. It's part of this book is my own education to learn how to change my own personal reality. But really, I think it was a lesson in order for me to help universally with everybody else around change the reality of this whole world together. And we can really do that by believing it in. And we can all agree on a wonderful future, instead of by just being opposed to what's happening now. Start changing how we think about the world that we live in now, and believe in a future that's amazing.
And like feeling it, right? Like, the thing about the feeling is the secret, and the thing about the living in the end, you know, like to feel that it is already so, is so powerful, you know, like. And also, like,
Absolutely.
like we were talking about, that reality already exists anyways, because everything already exists, you know. So like, it's a matter of aligning, you know, because if there's infinite, you know, parallel realities, and it's all happening in this, you know, eternal now, then it's up to us to align ourselves, right, with our energy, with the reality that we feel.
And like you're saying, the feeling is a secret. And why is the feeling the secret? Why? We ask ourselves why, because that sounds just like all talk. So we look to the reality transurfing, and the idea that when realities change, heart and mind are linked together. And the heart, when you think about the heart, it's really about the subconscious, the part of us, it beats even we know or not. And it's also about our feelings. So the heart communicates and broadcasts out this powerful thing. And when it lines up with the mind, which is an idea of an event happening, then we can actually, that's when we're saying, God, I want this to happen. So the feeling is connection to the heart. And the feeling is also a signal that's broadcast out, because we think that we think of an idea, and that's important, but that the signal that's broadcast out is around our feelings. The reason Neville Goddard was so good at it, he was an actor. He was an actor. So he makes it sound easy. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Because our feelings are an unusual and weird thing, you know?
Yeah. But you know, it makes sense, and it kind of like it rings true, like you feel how true that is, you know, and even when you play with it and you do that and you feel that, you know, like and then, you know, there's that whole thing as well where there's that delay factor. Like sometimes there's a delay factor, and that's when people give up. So it's kind of like you do a practice, but then sometimes it takes a while because it's like there's residue. It's like you already have a momentum going. Like, let's say you feel really, really guilty about something, right? And then you go like, well, I don't want to feel guilty about this anymore. So I'm going to, you know, think about it a different way, but then there's still, you know, this residue that keeps coming back, and you have to just keep going and not give up. Because
it's like those old Polaroid pictures. You remember those ones that was zzz, and then would come out, right?
Yeah.
It's like those old ones, and it's like you kind of wave them until they develop, and you start to see the picture.
Right.
And they would slowly develop. It's a massive 3-dimensional hologram that's developing like a Polaroid, and it's like you give up on it. It's while it's developing, it's like we just give up on it. Well, give it some time for the picture to come into place.
Yeah.
That's all that's happening. So it is a huge mistake people make. They want things to happen, and sometimes they do happen quickly. Sometimes everything hatches. It takes its time. You know, a baby is born for 9 months, and a horse, it's like a year. Everything has its own time that it develops. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And it's like too with failure, right? I got that message again, but whatever. So like with failure, because it's like, you know, we want to try something, and then, you know, we fail at first, and then go, well, scrap that now, you know. And it's like success kind of goes, well, prove it. You want to, you know, like you have to. And also there's advantage, right? Because you learned something, right? You either learned that this isn't quite the right direction, or you learned what it was that made you trip and fall or whatever. So it's kind of like the giving up too soon, you know, giving up on a dream. You know, there's that song, and it just breaks my heart, about he's leaving on a midnight train to Georgia because he realized dreams don't come true or whatever. It's like, oh my God, you know, that song just breaks my heart, because it's like, no, you keep going. You know, dreams can come true if you keep going.
It really is a lot like playing a game of...
What was that?
No, it's really a lot like playing a game of darts.
Right.
You're gonna aim and you try to hit it, and if you don't, you just try to shoot and you try to hit it again. And so people give up so easily, but learn to play a piano, you go along. That's really, I think, what it is. And so failure, you're always going to fail. A baseball player is going to fail when he comes up to bat and tries to hit the ball. You try to take each experience as a lesson, and then each one will help move you towards that exact spot where you're trying to move towards. So,
right.
Absolutely.
There's that saying about like the successful person has failed more times than, you know, the person who hasn't tried or whatever.
Right.
Like, yeah. So it's like, just keep going.
It's not a failure. It's just the journey that you're on, and that's a part of the journey. That's the movement that you're on. You have to get from here to here to go from this state to this state. And so you may think it's a failure, but that's just the road towards that state that you're moving towards. And that's how I try to look at it. It always is working to your advantage. It's just part of the road. But you have to commit fully. You have to die. Everything else has to go away. And when you do that, when you commit fully to that state and you believe it and you become it, that's when you will move towards it much faster. And oftentimes, if you didn't hit it, then did you really become it as much? You go back and look at how you were, and you'll see that you were also having opposite thoughts, and you pulled yourself off from that exact location that you were trying to hit. So,
Right.
yeah.
And trusting the unknown, right? And also it's like, somebody could have a goal or a dream or something, and then what happens is not exactly how, we first thought it would be, but it's even better or something, or it's
Right.
different, and it's kind of like, so it's like, it doesn't have to be that specific, but to just go in that direction. And like one of the sayings that I love is like, only good will come of this. Like, so no matter what is happening, no matter what it looks like, to just know it, and not as much saying the words, but really feeling like good will come of this. And even if you don't know what it is at that moment, you'll find that out later on, like, oh, now I see why that happened. Like, that was got me here or whatever,
It's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. I like that explanation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's another way of looking at advantage, because seeing the advantage, sometimes we don't see the advantage right away, but it's good to trust that it's there.
It's so interesting to see the advantage later on.
Yes.
It never, when you get that flat tire, you might not ever know what the advantage was, but you
Right.
might not have gone back on the road and there could have been a major accident, or there's so many different events out there. When you assume that it's an advantage, even when it's terrible, you never know. You could have been saved from some tragic accident. Once I've really embraced that, then it just, my reaction to things, it also changes my mindset in a way so that even if there is an advantage, my reaction to the disadvantage
Mm-hmm.
will broadcast out a normal energy, and you don't go into that wave of disfortune, which occurs when bad things will happen. So there is something that's along the reality transurfing is a mental martial art teaching,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yes.
You're going to have things come up, and if you take the view that it's to your advantage,
Yeah.
you react appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And so in many ways, that advantage technique is partially related to me personally, to my reaction.
Yes.
And the reaction, when you go back and look, a lot of times the mistakes or advantages that we have is how we react to events. Our
Right.
reaction in that argument we had with our lover or whatever, our reaction to the business person, it's always our reaction. So I'm always learning that to watch my reactions. And that's what's so beautiful about the advantage. If I just say, my first instinct is to say there's an advantage to this, there usually is.
Yeah.
And then I start to create a reality that has an advantage to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I've never quite thought of it quite that way before, that sometimes we'll never know what the advantage is, I just thought about, you
don't
can see
have
it
to
now or see it later, but the fact that you never see it, but that it's, there was an advantage, and it's a mystery.
Right. Yeah. I had the battery go out in my car a few months ago, and it was very frustrating. It was one of those ridiculous things. It was a faulty battery. But then later I had realized if my battery had not gone out, then I would have had to, I would have been in this ridiculous place if it would have happened another time, because there was a acid burning my battery and it needed to be replaced. And so then all this whole line of events, and then I would have missed out on this one business deal that I had, and it was a whole line of events. When I really started to look back on what actually happened by having it happen at that particular time, so I promise you, if you look at it, if you have time, you usually will find the advantage, but you sometimes just don't know what the advantage is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and or it'll just come at a time when you're least expected, when you see what it was,
right.
but that you don't have to see it. It's more important. I love what you said about reaction, because it's more important to know that there's an advantage than to actually have to identify what it is. That's the secondary thing, right?
The mindset will serve you. By taking on that mindset, it will serve you and it will help you. It's just, that's the biggest lesson from it. Yeah.
And because it's like, we are energy, and it's the energy of it. It's the energy of, of knowing all is well,
Right. Exactly.
And you know what? We've talked for an hour already. It went by so fast.
It went by so fast.
But I love ending on all is well. That's awesome. And so so everybody out there, like Brian's book will be out at the end of the month, and it's The Reality Revolution, and it'll be in all formats, right? Kindle, hardcover, paperback, the whole bit, right? And Audible, you're reading it, right? Are you reading the Audible version?
Yes, the Audible I think is going to come out a few weeks later, and then the hardcover is a few weeks later. But the paperback and the Kindle copy will be on March 31st.
Okay.
And I can't wait for you to listen to the audiobook. As somebody that loves audiobooks, it was a lot of fun to record.
Yeah.
I imagined what it would be like to record one, and it was different than doing my YouTube. Because there's no music on it, and it's because I always have music on the YouTube, and if you make any mistake, you got to go back and correct it, even the slightest mistake. So it was fun to do, and so I there's a part of me, as I was talking to my publicist earlier today, there's a part of me that just wants to give the book to everybody and just.
Well,
I'm at that point. I just want. It's not about. I'm not trying to sell copies of this book. I'm really not anymore. I really hope that the message of this book gets out to as many people as possible, and that is that we're in a reality revolution, and we have a choice right now.
Yeah.
There's two different Earths, and you can choose the one that's all negative, and it's all, all kinds of terrible things are happening, or you can choose the one that's positive, and you have a choice between fear and love and creation. And we are in this moment, and it's going to get faster and crazier, but it's going to get better and better for you in your own individual reality when you learn these techniques. And this is kind of a survival guide for the reality revolution. If you read the book, it's like a survival guide. Yeah.
But it's empowering, because we have the power. Like, we have the power to choose our state of being, and that's the ultimate power, right?
All the power. And
beautiful.
If I could just tell people they can achieve anything. The most incredible things are available to you.
Yes, because it already exists.
It already exists.
And that's, you're not creating it, it exists.
The secrets behind this book are worth $1 billion. If you truly go into this book and see the true secret, this book is worth $1 billion.
Yeah. And also, guys, check out Brian's YouTube channel. I think it's called Brian Scott, right? Is it also called The Reality Revolution? Is Brian Scott?
Brian Scott, The podcast is The Reality Revolution.
Right, and also there's a Facebook group too if you want to join. Where there's a lot of super cool people, and everybody. The interactions are amazing and very high vibes. So thank you so much, Brian, for being here and hanging out.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
All right.
Great. So we'll see you later.
Thank you.
Bye.